They seated me between a hired florist and the groom's cousin I'd never met. No name card, no welcome. Just an awkward squeeze into a space clearly not meant for 13. At my sister's engagement party, the one I funded, they made sure I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. I'm Hannah Whitley, the older sister, the responsible one, the placeholder, the invisible wallet wrapped in a smile. And I was done. Madeline, my sister, had always been the sun. Bright, warm, blinding. The kind of person who never needed to ask twice for help, because she never really asked, just expected. Growing up, she used to hold my hand in crowds. Now she doesn't even tag me in posts. That night, at her glittering vineyard engagement party, under the fairy lights and carefully curated playlists, she barely looked at me. She glowed in her white lace dress, flanked by bridesmaids who knew how to speak in hashtags and curated poses. I stood at the edge of her carefully assembled universe, and all I could think was, you used to braid my hair. I had driven 3 hours for this. Skipped a work deadline, paid for the centerpieces, the champagne tower, even the deposit for the acoustic band. I recognized each item because I'd seen the invoices. I paid them, but no one said my name once, not even when the toasts began. Uncle. Rick was the loudest, always has been. Somewhere between his second and third glass of Pinot, he raised his voice and grinned. Strange. 12 chairs but 13 people. Guess someone's always extra. The laughter was instant. Warm. Effortless and sharp, I smiled. Not the kind that reached your eyes. The kind that felt like holding a knife behind your back. Extras are easily removed, I said quietly, folding my napkin with surgical precision. A few heads turned. Rick chuckled nervously. Kidding. Obviously. But no one else spoke. Not even Madeline. So I stood. Calm. Deliberate. My chair scraped slightly, a soft scratch against the stone floor, but enough to draw eyes. I nodded to no one in particular and walked toward the vineyard gate. No storming out, no tears. Just a quiet exit, the kind people write off in the moment, until consequences follow. 40 minutes later, the music stopped. Not paused, stopped. The lights dimmed and staff began quietly packing up. Confusing because I had called them that morning. Not to sabotage, just to set a limit. The final installment hadn't been paid, and it wouldn't be. Not unless I saw my name on that seating chart. Not unless anyone, acknowledged me as part of this event. They hadn't. So I didn't. Back at the table, I imagine my mother's voice rising in soft panic. My father checking his phone, pretending he hadn't forwarded a group text earlier that week. Don't worry, I told her it's just a small thing. She probably won't come. I wasn't supposed to come. I wasn't wanted. But I came. I saw. And I stopped paying. As I drove away that night, my phone lit up. A text from Julia, a high school acquaintance who now bartended part-time at the vineyard. Girl, what the hell did you do? I let the message sit unread. The silence was satisfying. But that night, I didn't sleep. Not out of guilt, out of planning. Because this wasn't the first time I'd been forgotten. Cropped out of photos, left off invitation lists, told I was being dramatic when I asked to be seen. No, this had been coming for years. I just hadn't drawn the line until now. There was one guest who noticed me before I left. A young woman named Elise. She worked for the event coordinator, shadowing staff as part of an internship. Just 20, fresh-faced, eyes sharp. As I passed the gate, she caught my arm. You okay? She asked, barely a whisper. I nodded. Always. She looked back toward the glowing tables. They didn't even notice you left. I know, I said. That's the point. And here's the twist. Elise wasn't just an intern. 2 days later, I received an anonymous email with a subject line that read, "Thought you might want this." Attached were candid photos from the party. One in particular showed my mother holding her phone, displaying a group chat message that read, "If Hannah shows up, just seat her near the back. She won't say anything. She never does." Never? We'll see. I forwarded the message to a private folder I'd titled, "Clarity. Not revenge, not receipts, just clarity." Because sometimes the sharpest weapon isn't a scream. It's a pattern, laid out in black and white, piece by damning piece. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to collect, to watch, to prepare. Because when you're the extra, the one they don't think to count, you see everything they try to hide. And that's the most dangerous position of all. There's a moment you remember not because it hurt, but because it didn't surprise you. The absence of shock becomes its own kind of betrayal. For me, that moment came one Monday night when I was mindlessly scrolling through my phone during a late break at work. A video auto-played. Drone footage of a rooftop proposal, candles, violins, champagne, sunset, and Madeline in the center, laughing like she'd never known hardship. The caption read, "He asked, I said yes. Can't wait to celebrate with those who matter most." I wasn't tagged. I wasn't mentioned. I wasn't told. That same night, I opened my family group. Chat. Quiet. No buzz. No updates. I clicked into it, out of habit. Nothing since Easter. Then I saw a notification from Mom. A new message had come through an hour before, but it wasn't in my chat. It was a forwarded screenshot from her, mistakenly sent to me instead of the other thread, one I hadn't known existed. The title, at the top, Core Circle. I wasn't in it. That's when I stopped scrolling, not out of anger, out of calculation. I'd spent the past 5 years being the fallback. When Madeline moved back in with our parents after a failed job in Chicago, I helped cover utilities. When Dad's surgery came with unexpected rehab costs, I added my card to their account. When Mom wanted to throw Madeline a surprise 27th birthday weekend in Palm Springs, I co-signed the car rental and fronted the Airbnb deposit. It was always, just this once. You're the only one who's good with money. You know how to handle things. But I never got a seat. Never got seen. Only summoned. When the engagement video dropped, I expected the silence. But I still waited. 2 days before reaching out. I texted Madeline directly. The video looked nice. Congrats. She replied with a heart emoji and nothing else. No invitation. No thank you. Not even a follow-up question. 3 more days passed. Then Mom sent a group text, this time to the thread I was actually in. Just a heads up. Maddie's engagement. Party is this weekend? You don't need to come if it's too far. Totally casual. Casual? The venue was on the website of a luxury event company. I recognized the name. I'd paid a deposit to them once, during another family milestone where my presence had been optional, but my wallet wasn't. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I called the venue pretending to be a guest needing parking instructions. The woman on the phone, sweet and efficient, confirmed the guest list. Madeline Whitley, Ryan Benton, 70 confirmed attendees. She paused when I asked if the name Hannah Whitley was on it. No, I don't see that name. But sometimes the hosts leave off close family, assuming they're already informed. That was the twist. I wasn't forgotten. I was intentionally left off. But they still assumed I'd pay like I always had. That week I went through my credit card statements. Not the one I use daily, the old one, the one I gave to Mom during the pandemic when they needed help with groceries. It had stayed active. I checked the charges. One stood out, $2,850, Étoile Florale and Events. I called the number. Hi, this is Lena with Étoile Florale, finalizing arrangements for the Whitley Benton engagement. Is this the right number for confirming billing? I didn't answer. I just hung up. That night I opened a spreadsheet, not for budgeting, for evidence. every unexplained charge, every missed thank you, every time I picked up the pieces without recognition. I called the file seed money, because that's what they were doing, planting seeds in my time, my savings, my emotional labor, and harvesting praise for themselves, and I was the soil, forgotten once the flowers bloomed. A day later, I called Madeline. I rarely did. The last time had been 2 birthdays ago, when I sent her a Kindle she never acknowledged. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey," she said, cautious. "I saw the video." "Oh, right. Isn't it cute? Ryan planned the whole thing. I wasn't invited." "To the proposal?" "To any of it." A pause. Then, "Well, you're not really into big group things." I let the silence stretch, just long enough for her to realize the weight of what she'd said. Then I replied, "No. I'm just not into being treated like a background donor." Another pause. Then a rushed, "It's not like that. We figured you'd come to the wedding. Or not. Whatever feels right for you." "That's the thing," I said calmly. "You figured, but you never asked." She sighed, irritated now. "Why are you making this about you?" That sentence, that moment. It clicked. I wasn't sad anymore. I was documenting, and I wasn't going to scream or plead. I was going to do what no one expected from the quiet one. I was going to remember everything. 3 nights later, a package arrived at my apartment. A formal invitation to the engagement party. Cream envelope, gold foil. My name spelled correctly. Handwritten. Too late. They didn't know I'd already made the call to the event company. They didn't know I'd flagged the pending charges. They didn't know I'd quietly reached out to one of Madeline's old college friends who had been cut from the guest list last minute for budget reasons. A girl named Priya, who now worked in PR and had plenty to say. They didn't know I was already preparing to reclaim the narrative, because they thought silence meant submission. They forgot silence is where strategy lives, and I've been quiet long enough. The first time Madeline asked me for money, it was raining. I still remember that, not because of the weather, but because she cried. Not the performative kind either. Real tears, blotchy cheeks, mascara bleeding into her phone camera as she told me she was late on rent and terrified Mom and Dad would find out. I transferred $400 without asking any more questions. She texted, "Back, you saved me, just this once." It wouldn't be. The second time came 2 months later. "Hey, do you have like $250? She messaged. "I'll pay you Friday." That Friday turned into the next, and then into silence. I didn't chase it. She was my sister. Family floats each other. That's what I kept telling myself. That's what Mom always said too. But I noticed something over time. Our family only floated one direction. My wallet was the raft. No one ever asked if I was sinking. It didn't stop at rent. There were emergencies, vet bills, car trouble, dental work. Then there were opportunities. A course she never finished, a deposit on an apartment she never moved into, money for a freelance gig that never existed. One day I caught Dad on the phone with a contractor promising payment would come through. Once my daughter wires it. I was in the room. He meant me. Didn't even flinch saying it. And then came the real discovery. I was reconciling my accounts. One night, a habit I'd learned out of necessity, and saw a charge on my second credit card. A card I hadn't used since 2021. A card that still sat in my old drawer at Mom's place, or so I thought. The charge was for $2,800 to a floral designer I didn't recognize. I called the company. "Étoile Florale," the woman answered cheerfully. "Is this Hannah Whitley? Calling about final payment for the Whitley-Benton engagement?" There was a pause, long enough for her to fill the silence. "We have you listed as the primary cardholder on the invoice." I didn't speak. I just hung up. My hands weren't shaking. That's the part I remember most. I expected anger, but all I felt was the click of something sliding into place. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern, a system. And I'd been trained into it, taught to keep giving, to accept the quiet as gratitude, to be the person they call in crisis but never during celebrations. Later that night, I checked my email. An old thread between Mom and me surfaced. From a year ago. She'd asked to borrow the card for groceries during a rough patch, said she'd shred it once things were back on track. I never followed up. I never noticed she didn't. Because I trusted her. Because she was my mother. But the more I looked, the more I found. Event deposits, Uber rides in cities I wasn't in, a Sephora order that had Madeline's signature lipstick shade. She used my card to buy the dress she wore in her engagement photos. The ones I saw online, not in person. I called Mom the next day. I didn't lead with confrontation, just a simple question. Do you still have that credit card? A pause. Which one, sweetheart? The one I left with you. For emergencies. Oh. No, I thought I gave that back ages ago. You didn't. Well, it's probably somewhere in the drawer. Why? I was charged for your daughter's engagement party. She exhaled through the phone, slow and tired. Hannah, don't make this a thing. You know Maddie's been under pressure. And I haven't? There was silence. That kind of silence where you realize they've rehearsed this moment, not because they thought they'd get caught, but because they knew someday you might wake up. It's just a party, she finally said. No, I replied. It's a bill? I ended the call before she could respond. I could have frozen the card right then. Reported fraud. I didn't. Not yet. I was building something. A narrative. A case. Not for court, but for clarity. Because they were counting on me to do what I'd always done. Keep it quiet. Smooth it over. Let it go. They didn't realize. I had already stopped being part of the family. I had become their silent investor. And the returns were emotional overdrafts. The twist came 2 days later. I received a group email from Mom. Subject, Group gift for Maddie's honeymoon. She wrote, Since you live far away, I've put you down for the big item. Just $1,000. Just send it to me when you can. Love you? No ask, just expectation. Just a line item in a budget I hadn't approved. I clicked reply, then paused, then clicked forward, and sent it to my private folder labeled Clarity. A folder now 23 items deep. Then I opened my budgeting app and created a new category. Not gifts, not family. I named it Exit. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to explain. I was going to dismantle the system from the inside. Quietly, thoroughly, precisely. The next time they called me extra, they wouldn't realize I was the only thing holding the table together. Until I left, and when I did, nothing would stay standing. There's a unique kind of silence that follows being erased. Not with malice, but with ease. It's not loud, not cruel. It's casual, efficient, like someone deleting your name from a list they never meant to include in the first place. That silence found me in the form of a forwarded screenshot, one my mother meant to send to another thread, the one I wasn't in. She'd copied it from what was clearly a private group, chat labeled Core Circle. In it, a cousin asked, Will Hannah be at the shower? And Madeline replied, She's not really involved in this part of my life. Followed by a smiling face and a champagne emoji. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I just stared at the screen for a long, slow minute, letting the words settle like cold water on skin. Not really involved. Like I was some phase she'd grown out of, like ballet class or volunteering. She hadn't even said my name. Just she. A vague pronoun for someone once trusted with her secrets, her scraped knees, her rent. It wasn't just the exclusion. It was the certainty. The way they all spoke in a tone that assumed I'd remain quiet. that I wouldn't push back, that I'd accept my place as the backdrop to their curated lives. So I started gathering. I downloaded every invoice with my name tied to it, created a private folder, encrypted, labeled Clarity, screenshots of transactions, emails with floral designers, payment confirmations for the cake, the lighting rentals, even the signature cocktail tasting session I never got to attend. All of it. Because silence is not the absence of evidence, it's what makes evidence powerful. One twist came quicker than I expected. A distant cousin named Paige posted a carousel of photos from Madeline's bridal shower. I wasn't in a single one, no surprise. But what caught my eye was a comment from someone outside the family. "Can't wait to finally meet your sister." Underneath, Madeline had replied, "Oh, you won't. She's not invited to this part of my life." That phrase again. This part of my life. Like I was the ugly wallpaper in a room she only used for storage. The worst part? I still hadn't said anything. Not to her. Not to Mom. Not to Dad. But I was listening. Watching. Tracking the distance not just in miles, but in mindset. That same week, I drove to our parents' house under the guise of dropping off a package that had been misdelivered. Mom opened the Doctor wearing her "we're still a happy family" smile. I walked past her without returning it. In the kitchen, I noticed something on the counter, an envelope, thick, sealed in gold, addressed to the Whitley family. Inside, I imagined, were thank you notes or RSVPs, perhaps a vendor receipt or a planning schedule. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Just seeing it was enough. I recognized the logo, Etoile Events. Same company from the charges on my account, the company they never told me they were using under my name. "Want tea?" Mom asked, cheerful, but brittle. "No," I said, watching her carefully. "I'm just here to grab my old mail." She smiled again, too quick. "You know you're always welcome here." That was a test. I let it sit. "I'm sure," I said, and walked to the hallway where my old room still smelled like lavender and dust. There, on my former desk, I found a stack of opened mail. One piece stood out, a reward statement from my secondary credit card. I opened it. The balance was higher than it should have been. Not outrageous, but curious. Later that night, I checked the breakdown. Charges from a boutique in Napa, a cake shop in Sonoma, all tied to dates I wasn't even in the state. I cross-referenced photos from Madeline's Instagram stories. Same dates. Same locations. She'd tagged the stores, like leaving digital fingerprints assuming I'd never look for them. I emailed myself the evidence. Then I did something unexpected. I emailed my bank. Not to dispute the charges, yet, but to flag the account for activity outside my authorization. Just a note on the record. A breadcrumb. I wasn't blowing the bridge. I was mapping the landmines. That night, I also did something pettier. I logged into the digital wedding registry. Madeline had shared with family. Not me, of course, but I had the link. In it, I noticed a $300 flatware set already marked as gifted. The name under it? Hannah W. I hadn't bought it, but someone had used my name, my login. I clicked the contact form and filed a claim for fraudulent access. It wasn't about the cutlery. It was about the line. They'd crossed it. The following day, I got a text from Dad. "Hey, kiddo, just making sure you're not stressing. Too much. Maddie's big day is a lot, but let's keep the focus on her, yeah?" That was his way of saying, don't make waves. Don't speak up. Don't ruin the optics. I didn't reply. Instead, I called a friend of mine, Kira, who used to freelance in event planning before she left the industry. Burnout, mostly. Too many fake smiles, not enough contracts that held weight. I asked her if she still had access to vendor networks. She did. I gave her a list of vendors I suspected had my name on file. Told her I wanted confirmation without alerting anyone. Kira didn't ask why. She just said, "You'll have it in 2 days." And 2 days later, she sent me a folder. Inside were 6 vendor confirmations with my name as authorized secondary contact. On 2 of them, my email was listed. On 4, just my credit card. They'd used my identity, my silence, my history of not fighting back. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused, because being erased doesn't make you powerless. It makes you untraceable, and untraceable is where real power begins. The vineyard looked like it was plucked straight from a lifestyle magazine. Hanging fairy lights, glass orbs swaying in the breeze, soft acoustic covers of top 40 hits echoing from the hired musician. In the corner. Everything had been staged for perfection, but perfection doesn't hold when you pull the funding. That's the thing about pretty things. They fall apart quickly when no one pays the electricity bill. 40 minutes after I walked out of the engagement party, the lights went dark. Not romantic dim, blackout. The generator stuttered once, then fell silent. People murmured, eyes scanning the sky like power failures were acts of God, not accounting errors. The guitarist stopped mid-song, awkwardly strumming one last unresolved chord. Then the champagne ran out. The cake never made it out of the kitchen. Waiters started packing up glassware. I wasn't there to see it. I was already halfway down the highway, windows down, wind in my face like proof that the silence I left behind was finally loud enough. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I hadn't made calls to cancel vendors or yelled at managers. All I did was stop. I stopped transferring money, stopped extending deadlines, stopped allowing my name to be used like a blank check. What none of them realized until too late was that I'd been the silent infrastructure holding that evening together. And once I removed myself, the structure collapsed. The next morning, I got a voicemail from Uncle Rick, slurred as usual. "Hannah, you really picked a night to make a point. Everyone's talking. Proud of you in a weird way, you know? Took guts." I didn't save the message. I didn't respond. But I did notice one thing. He never asked why. Because, deep down, they all knew. They just hadn't expected the quiet one to finally move. Later that day, I got a call from Julia, the vineyard's weekend manager, and, by coincidence, someone I knew in high school. She'd been 1 grade below me, a quiet girl with thick glasses and a gift for disappearing into corners. I'd helped her once during senior year when her car broke down in the snow. I hadn't thought she'd remember. She remembered. "Hannah," she said, voice tight with unease. I hope you're okay. I wasn't going to call, but what happened last night?" I let the question hang. She continued. "The vendors said something about a locked card, that your authorization got pulled. There were notes that you were listed as the backup payer. Some staff didn't even know until invoices bounced. Maddie looked like she'd seen a ghost." "She saw the absence," I said. "Not the ghost." Julia paused, then asked, "Was it on purpose?" I could have lied, but what was the point now? "Yes," I said, "but not out of revenge, just balance." She didn't judge. "If you ever need a character reference," she said with a slight laugh, "you've got one. That party was held together by money no one admitted came from you. It wasn't just about the bills. It was about the assumption that they could build their fantasy on my foundation and never ask if it could carry the weight. They didn't see me as essential, but they still relied on me like oxygen." There was a twist later that week, a quiet one, a new version of the party. Invitation appeared online. Different caption, edited photos, new lighting filters to mask the blackout. In the corner of one picture, almost hidden behind a centerpiece, I could see my purse on the empty chair. The one they hadn't labeled, the one they hadn't assigned to anyone. They didn't crop me out this time. But they didn't name me either. Mom called on Thursday. not to apologize, to check in. "How are you, sweetheart?" We were surprised. "You left early." "You didn't leave me much reason to stay," I said. She sighed. "You know how events are. Chaotic. It's easy to forget things." I wasn't a thing. A beat. Then her voice softened into that rehearsed mother tone, the one that made you feel like you were the one being unreasonable. "This isn't like you." "No," I said. "This is exactly like me. You just never expected to meet that version." I didn't wait for her reply. I ended the call. That night, I updated the spreadsheet. I'd been tracking every payment for months, labeled them by category: venue, decor, food, alcohol, transportation. Added one more tab. Withdrawn. Under it, I listed every future transaction I would not make. Next to it, I wrote, "Let them find out the cost of forgetting you." And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel bitter. I felt awake. They hadn't just taken from me, they'd taught me something. That neglect wears 1,000 faces. Indifference, assumption, entitlement dressed as need. They'd trained me to believe that support equaled love, that invisibility was a virtue. But now I understood. Being needed doesn't mean being valued. And being used doesn't mean being loved, so I stayed quiet. Not as a victim, as a strategist. Let them edit the photos. Let them rewrite the story. Because the truth was coming. And this time, it had my name on it. The tickets arrived in a glossy envelope, tucked between a flyer for discounted tires and a grocery store circular. Inside, 4 seats, front row, state championship game. The kind of seats my dad used to talk about like relics from a time when loyalty to a team meant something. "Just the family," the note read in Mom's handwriting. "Let's just enjoy a night together. No drama." No drama. It was almost funny, if it weren't so condescending. They sent me peace like it was a gift, not a negotiation tactic. But I accepted. Not out of forgiveness, out of precision. Because when people like them extend olive branches, they never check for thorns. And I'd sharpened mine. The game was at a packed stadium, bodies pressed close, beer-fueled chants rolling like thunder between the aisles. I arrived early, sat 2 seats away from them. It wasn't pettiness. It was survival. Distance was the only buffer that had ever given me clarity. Madeline was there already, posing for selfies in a foam finger and a cropped team jersey. Mom wore her signature shade of coral, broadcasting warmth, and Dad handed me a hot dog like we were starring. In a Hallmark reboot, no one asked how I was. No one acknowledged the silence since the party had crumbled. Just a performance. A family trying to outrun its own cracks. I watched them. And I waited. Because halftime was coming. And they wouldn't have time to run, once the food lines clogged and the exits jammed with screaming fans. I knew the terrain. I'd been mapping it for months. 15 minutes before the break, I stood up. Calm, composed. My voice sliced through the roar like a scalpel. "Let's grab something to eat. I've got something to say." Madeline rolled her eyes like she was bracing for one of my moments. Dad shrugged and followed. Mom's smile flickered, just slightly. Maybe she sensed it, that this wasn't a conversation. This was a reckoning. I led them to a table by the concession stand. Not tucked in a corner, not too exposed. Close enough for people to overhear, far enough that no one could easily intervene. I placed my phone on the table and unlocked it. A folder sat open on the screen. Clarity. "I know you've been wondering what happened at the engagement party," I began, voice low but level. "You left," Mom said. "We figured you just got overwhelmed." "Overwhelmed?" I tilted my head. I paid for half that night. I wasn't overwhelmed. I was removed. Dad's jaw tightened. "We didn't ask you to." You didn't have to. You knew I would. Madeline gave a performative sigh. Here we go. No, I cut in. Here you go. I tapped a few times on my phone, turned the screen toward them. A spreadsheet. Tabs in color-coded categories, florals, catering, transportation. Each with dates, confirmation numbers, and payment IDs. All of it traced back to me. You're making it sound like we scammed you, Dad said stiffly. Did you not? I asked. Mom reached for the screen, but I pulled it back. I'm not here for debate. I'm here for truth. Madeline snapped. We said we'd pay you back. You never said that. I looked her dead in the eyes. You said just this once, then did it again. And again. You knew I wouldn't push back. You were counting on it. Dad's voice rose. We're family. Exactly, I said. And that's the problem. You used that word like a weapon. Family meant I couldn't say no. Family meant I was guilted into silence. Family meant you got away with pretending I didn't exist unless my bank account showed up. Around us, someone in a nearby Jersey was half listening now. A child glanced our way. I didn't care. I wanted this part to be seen. They'd erased me in private. I'd expose them in public. I turned to Madeline. You once said I wasn't part of this part of your life, that I didn't matter. So why did your registry have my name on purchases I never made? Why did your florist have my billing info? She blinked. Hard. And the honeymoon? I continued. Mom emailed me, told me I'd been put down for a $1,000 contribution, as if I was just another invoice to be filled. No request, no discussion, just assumed. Madeline tried again. You could have just said no. I did. The second I walked out. Twist. I opened another tab on the phone. Legal notice prepared. Not served? Yet. I paused. Let that sink in. You can keep pretending this was a misunderstanding, but every dollar has a record. Every lie has a cost. Silence. Then Dad said quietly, You think money gives you power? No, I replied. I think truth does. Mom's face crumpled, not in sadness, but in fear. Fear that I wasn't bluffing, that I wasn't angry anymore. I was organized. I stood up. You brought me here thinking I'd play along. Smile for the crowd, eat the hot dog, clap for the team. But I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here to mark the line. I slid a flash drive across the table. Everything you owe. Every receipt. You have 2 weeks. Madeline didn't touch it. Neither did Mom. But Dad took it. His fingers were shaking. As I turned to leave, I dropped one final sentence. Not for drama, for closure. This isn't revenge. It's reimbursement. Then I walked away. Behind me, the halftime show began. Fireworks cracked above the field. The crowd roared. But at that sticky plastic table under stadium lights, I knew the show was only just starting. The morning after. The stadium confrontation, I expected silence. But what I got was a ping. A $300 Venmo transfer from my father labeled, just starting to make things right. It wasn't much, not compared to what they owed, but it wasn't the money that caught my attention, it was the wording, just starting. Like they thought they were still in charge of the timeline, like they believed they could set the pace of repair. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the spreadsheet, added a new tab, repayment trail, and beneath it, a single line. $300. Initial offer, received without apology. By noon, 2 more payments came in. One $100 from Mom, no message. $600 from a shared family account I recognized from the florist charge. That one was marked partial reimbursement. I stared at those words for a full minute. Partial. As if the debts they racked up were negotiable. As if what they owed me wasn't already a discounted price for years of silence. I took a screenshot and sent it to Noah. He replied less than 5 minutes later. Response drafting now. Expect follow-up within 24 hours. Noah was never dramatic. That's why I hired him. He wasn't the kind of lawyer who made threats. He made statements. Ones that landed harder than screaming ever could. That night, I sat by the window in my apartment with a cup of coffee gone cold. Outside, it was raining. A steady, quiet kind of rain. Not angry, just inevitable. They were starting to pay me back. But not because they were sorry. Because I'd shown them what I could do if I wasn't quiet anymore. The twist came the next day. An email from Madeline. Subject: trying to fix this. No greeting. No apology. Just, I sent $2,000. I know it doesn't fix everything, but it's something. I just want us to be okay again. I hit refund. Then I typed 4 words. This isn't about money, and hit send. Because it wasn't. Not anymore. They could pay every cent they owed. Return every dollar siphoned through trust and guilt and manipulation. But they couldn't return the years. They couldn't undo the moment I stood at that table set for 12, knowing I was the 13th, only because I'd paid my way into a seat no one wanted to reserve for me. I waited for Noah's reply, and when it came, it was colder than the rain outside. A formal letter addressed to all 3 of them. My parents and Madeline. It outlined every charge, every breach of financial trust, every instance of unauthorized use. Attached were pages of statements, timelines, and a final note. This balance must be paid in full within 10 business days to avoid escalation. I read the line twice. To avoid escalation. It didn't promise destruction. It promised control. That was the difference now. I had it. And they knew it. Over the next week, the money came in. All of it. In awkward transfers. Through different platforms. From different names. I watched it flow in like a reluctant tide. But none of it was accompanied by a call. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked if I needed anything. They paid because they were afraid of what I'd do if they didn't, and that fear? It was the most honest thing they'd ever given me. Then Mom called. A voicemail, soft-voiced and trembling. Honey, the money's back. Let's just leave it behind, okay? We're still family. Things got messy, but we're trying. Can't we just move forward? I listened twice. She wanted forward, but only if we skipped the part where they looked back. I deleted the message. That weekend, I passed Madeline's fiancé on the street. We locked eyes for a second. He looked away. Didn't wave. Didn't speak. Good. He shouldn't. Because somewhere in his inbox sat a copy of that ledger too. One line labeled crypto bailout, tied directly to his name. Another under moving costs. Another under utilities assistance. All quietly paid. All unspoken. Until now. I didn't need to sue them. I didn't want headlines or legal wars. I just needed them to know I could. And that knowledge alone did more damage than any judge's ruling ever could. But the true twist? It wasn't in the money. It was in what stopped happening. No more last-minute texts. No, can you cover this just once? No emergencies. No guilt-laced calls. Just nothing. And it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever known. I used to think peace was something you had to fight to earn. Now I know it's what you create when you stop fighting for people who only want you when you're useful. By Sunday, all debts were cleared, and I changed the name of the spreadsheet from Clarity to Closure, because now it was both. The email came on a Monday. Subject line: Let's handle this like adults. It was from my father. Polite. Cold. Predictable. The message. Inside was brief, measured words wrapped in caution. We understand emotions were high at the game. We'd prefer not to escalate things further. Let's talk and resolve this together. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Noah. By Tuesday afternoon, he had drafted a response. 3 pages. No embellishment. Just facts. Each financial transaction backed by documentation. Each section marked by clear legal terminology. Unauthorized use of funds, misrepresentation of financial obligations, and unjust enrichment. At the bottom, the summary read, should full reimbursement not begin within 10 business days from the date of receipt, we are prepared to pursue recovery through formal legal means. He had it printed, signed, and delivered to their house by courier. Signature required. They signed. Then, silence. For 5 days, nothing happened. No messages, no calls, no passive-aggressive forwarded memes about forgiveness or family above all. Just stillness, which told me they were deciding, figuring out how much. They feared what I might do next. On the 6th day, the money began to arrive. First $100 from Mom, then $4,500 from an account I recognized from the engagement planning files. The transfers came in pieces, almost like they were trying to make it look less like an admission and more like scattered generosity. They wanted to make it feel accidental, like it was never theft, just confusion. But that narrative doesn't hold up when every deposit comes with the exact cent amount I'd outlined in the ledger. On the 7th day, a lump sum appeared from Dad's business account, $8,600. The memo line read, partial payment, misunderstanding. That word again, misunderstanding. As if I'd hallucinated the floral invoices. As if the catering deposit hadn't been billed to my card. As if they hadn't known for months what they were doing and simply hoped I'd stay quiet, as always. I sent Noah a screenshot. His reply, follow-up sent. Clarifying that partial payments are not acceptable. We are not negotiating facts. The next morning, the remaining balance cleared. They had paid everything. Every penny for Madeline's engagement, for her rented vineyard dreams. The bridal shower balloons, the monogrammed menus, even the emergency utilities I had covered months before when the AC unit just happened to die in the middle of July. All of it. But they never said they were sorry. Madeline sent me another email, shorter this time. I know this doesn't change things, but I'm trying, that's all. I didn't respond. She had tried to turn money into absolution. But repayment isn't repair. It's damage control. I refunded her final $2,000, not because I didn't need it, but because I wanted her to understand. This wasn't transactional anymore. This was about principles, boundaries, dignity, and no one buys their way back into those. Later that week, a letter arrived in a pale blue envelope. My mother's handwriting. 2 pages of cursive. Careful, clean, full of phrases like, we never meant to hurt you, and this family has been through enough, and I just want things to go back to the way they were. I stopped reading at the 4th line. The moment she wrote, we never meant for this to go so far, because that's the truth they never say out loud. They never mean for it to go far. They mean for it to be gotten away with. They mean for it to stay unnoticed. They mean for the exploitation to continue just below the surface, quiet, convenient, and invisible. And when it finally erupts, they act shocked that there was ever a crack. I folded the letter. Didn't tear it up, didn't burn it, just slid it into a drawer I no longer opened. The real twist came not from them, but from me, because for the first time in years, I didn't feel tense when my phone rang. I didn't brace for a request. I didn't check my Venmo notifications with dread. I didn't feel like a family utility line, always running, always tapped. Peace wasn't loud. It wasn't even satisfying, not in a revenge way. It was simply quiet. On Sunday morning, I changed the locks to my apartment. Not because anyone had a key, but because I wanted the symbolism. I wanted the sense that access now had to be earned, not assumed. Then I sat at my kitchen table, brewed coffee, and opened a blank document. I titled it, "What Comes Next?" Because for the first time in years, the answer wasn't, "Whatever they need me to do." It was, "Whatever I choose." She knocked instead of ringing the bell. Of course she did. Emma, I still stumble sometimes, calling her by the nickname I haven't said aloud in months, knew better than to use the doorbell. I'd learned to ignore sounds like that. Knocking, though? That was personal. It meant someone wanted to be heard. I opened the door halfway. She stood in front of me wearing no makeup, a hoodie 2 sizes too big, and a look I hadn't seen since we were kids, right after she broke something and didn't want to tell Mom. But this wasn't a broken vase. It was a broken dynamic, and she hadn't come to return the pieces. "I'm not here for money," she said. I nodded once. That's new. She didn't flinch. Points for that. I came because I wanted to ask if you'd think about the wedding. The new one. What about it? We're doing something smaller now, more intimate. No DJs, no cake towers, just close family. I'd like you to come. I let the silence stretch so wide she had to fill it. She continued. I know we messed up. I messed up. But I don't want my future kids growing up in a family that doesn't talk. You're still my sister. No, I said. I was your bank, until the account froze. That landed. I could see it in her eyes. Not because it hurt, because it was true. I'm not proud of what happened, she added, but I'm trying to make it right. We can't undo the past, but maybe we can. I held up a hand. Your wedding already happened, Madeline. It happened the moment you charged $4,200 to my card without asking. It happened when you cropped me out of the family photo. When I sat at a table for 12 and realized I was number 13. The extra. She blinked, but didn't break. You think an invitation erases that? She looked away. I just thought maybe, this time, we could do it differently. That's the thing, I said. You're not offering me peace. You're offering me silence again. The kind where we pretend none of this happened. And you know what? That kind of quiet almost killed me. Now her lips pressed together. She had no script for this version of me. The one who didn't fold, didn't flinch, didn't fund the lie. I'm trying, she whispered. But it sounded like a question. You didn't lose a sister, Madeline, I replied. You just finally saw what she becomes when she stops being convenient. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a blank white envelope, scribbled 4 words on the front in thick, black ink, return to sender. When I came back, I placed it between us on the small entry table. That's my RSVP. She didn't move to touch it. She didn't touch anything. I just thought, she began, but the rest dissolved. She walked to the door, hand on the handle. Then she looked back once. If anything ever changes, you'll know where to find me. Exactly, I said. Behind me. She left. I didn't close the door right away. I just stood there listening to her footsteps fade down the stairs, then the soft click of her car door, then the engine, then nothing. That envelope sat where she left it. I didn't toss it. I slid it into the same drawer that now held my mother's letter and my father's half-hearted email. Not as memories, as documentation. A different kind of accounting. 3 days later, I got a notification. Utilities for their apartment had been officially disconnected from my name. Another, the last of the debt was paid. Then a third, unexpected, reminding me that the car loan I co-signed for Madeline 4 years ago had been refinanced and retitled. I hadn't asked for that, but someone had made it happen. No more debt. No more favors. No more strings. The next Sunday I made coffee in silence, the kind of silence I didn't have to buy with obedience. Outside, rain tapped at the window, not a storm. Just a soft, steady sound. I didn't think about the wedding. I didn't think about the past. I just sat there and listened to the quiet. And for the first time, it wasn't empty. That afternoon, I walked to the post office, asked for a new name, label for my mailbox. Nothing elaborate, just black letters on a white strip. My name, alone. Underneath, a short line. No family requests accepted. They didn't lose me. They spent me. And now I'm bankrupt. Not in money, but in tolerance. And for the first time in my life, I owe them nothing. I found the letter on my kitchen counter at 6:03 a.m. It hadn't come through the mail. There was no envelope, no stamp, just a folded sheet of notebook paper slid under the door like a coward's confession. I hadn't heard footsteps, hadn't heard knocking, just silence. The handwriting was familiar, my mother's. It said, "We all make mistakes. But we're still blood, that's how they always ended it." With blood, as if biology is a bond that excuses betrayal, as if DNA is a receipt for endless withdrawal, as if the bruises you can't see matter less than the names they never used when introducing you to others. Hannah Whitley, stood at my door in the early morning light, holding the past between two fingers like it might catch fire. But I didn't. Rip it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked to my desk, pulled out a black pen, wrote 4 words on the back, and slid it under their door later that same day. Stick together. I'm out. I heard her before I saw her. The familiar pause at the stairwell. The hesitation. She knocked. Once, then twice, like always. Madeline. No makeup, no ring, no act. Just a girl who used to share my room and now stood like a stranger trying to re-enter a house she once helped burn down. She didn't ask for anything this time. She just stood there. I let her speak. I owed her that much, if only to hear the hollow. "I just wanted to say I don't blame you for anything," she murmured. "I mean it. You were right to leave." That surprised me, not because I needed the admission, but because it was the first time she used the word leave without pairing it with drama or overreaction. "And the money?" I asked quietly. "We paid it back because we had to," she said, honest. "But I'm here because I don't know how to undo the rest." "You don't," I said. "That's the point." She looked down. "Then why am I still here?" "Because some people confuse consequence with closure. You got the consequence, but closure, that's mine to build." She nodded, almost like she understood. Almost. And then she turned and left. That night, I did something small but symbolic. I changed my number. I didn't notify anyone. The people who mattered already had my real contact. The ones who didn't? Let them call silence. Over the next month, my life got quieter, not empty, just lighter. No surprise bills, no family group chats, no guilt-laced voice memos about emergencies. Just coffee at my own pace. Walks in my neighborhood where I wasn't avoiding someone's call. Sundays that were mine again. I didn't disappear. I just stopped being accessible to people who only saw me as a transaction. I showed up to places I was wanted, not expected. I answered messages that asked how I was, not what I could do, and slowly I healed. Not all at once, not perfectly, but fully. And here's the twist, because every story needs one. I didn't write them out of my life, I just stopped letting them write me out of my own. Here's what I learned. Forgiveness is not about giving someone access again. It's about releasing the grip they had on your identity. And family? Family. Doesn't mean obligation. It means recognition. If they only remember you when they need something, that's not love. It's dependency. You don't have to keep setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't have to keep pulling up a chair to tables that never had your name on a place card. You are allowed, entitled, to protect your peace, even from people who share your blood. So if you've ever been the one who paid quietly, who showed up without being acknowledged, who gave everything and got half-truths in return, know this: you are not extra. You were essential. They just weren't worthy of the cost. And if you've made it this far into my story, maybe it's because a part of it feels familiar. Maybe you've been the one standing in the shadows of other people's celebrations, funding their comfort at the expense of your own. Let me say this directly to you. Stop waiting for them to notice your absence. Start noticing your own worth. If this story moved you, if it made you think, reflect, or just feel less alone, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. It helps us keep making stories like this, stories that say what others are too afraid to say out loud. We're not here for the noise. We're here for the clarity. So stick with us. We're just getting started.